Welcome to Breaking Banks Africa. I'm Matteo Rizzi. Let us take you on a journey of entrepreneurship, innovation, and vibrant ecosystems Africa has to showcase. More than 1 in 4 people will be African by 2050, this continent being already the youngest of the planet. You can't miss these stories. This is Breaking Banks Africa. Let's roll. Hey guys, welcome back to Breaking Banks Africa. My name is Matteo Rizzi. I'm the executive producer of the show. This is show number 16, and I'm here with my brother that I'm interviewing for the second time since Singapore. I still remember very well our first podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, Premier Oiwoh, CEO of NIBSS. Premier, my brother, welcome to the show.
Yeah, good morning, my brother, and it's nice to be here after our Singapore experience, and it's always nice to reconnect with you. Thank you.
Premier, so this audience is much bigger than the audience we had in Singapore in terms of, who is listening to Breaking Banks.
Okay.
We are actually the largest fintech podcast of the planet, but no pressure at all. It's still an informal conversation between brothers. So, but the reason why I'm saying this is that give us a little bit of context, about NIBSS, because not, everyone, would know. So we'll start it from there.
Okay. Well, I'll start by calling out my name. My name is Premier Oiwoh. I'm the Managing Director and CEO for NIBSS. I've been in office now since 2019, and NIBSS was created 33 years ago, and it was created by a group of banks and the Central Bank of Nigeria. And banks sit on my board, about 9 banks, and the Central Bank chairs the board of NIBSS. And NIBSS was primarily created to facilitate interoperability of payment across the Nigerian ecosystem, and also to serve as a shared infrastructure to lower cost for the ecosystem. And that's our primary goal and responsibility in NIBSS.
Premier, when you were talking, and I was thinking that NIBSS is actually a little bit younger than SWIFT. So it's I think SWIFT is like a 40-something years old, and it's incredible because there are, as you know, I worked for SWIFT for many years. There is a lot of similarities, like a bank owned, serving the great purpose of interconnecting financial players is very interesting. I did not know. I'm learning today. The NIBSS is 33 years old. Incredible.
Yes, actually 33 years old with a lot of impact and a lot of positive achievements in terms of how we have helped our nation and improve payments within the ecosystem based on a lot of things that we have been able to do. And I think, as you already know, we built the first account-to-account instant payment rail in the whole world. And that's one of the greatest achievements and the pride of NIBSS, one of the achievements of NIBSS actually, and then with many more other things that we have been able to create. So it's 33 years old, and for now focused on serving Nigeria and then looking at the bigger picture as we move on. So,
Premier, how do you see the role of NIBSS? Because the way I see it, to explain it, to the bigger crowd, is I see NIBSS a little bit like water and electricity, right? So that you basically only know that what NIBSS is when something goes wrong. Otherwise, you're the machine behind the scenes that make everything working. But maybe I have a limited vision. I would love to listen to yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you are perfectly correct. NIBSS is more like the electricity grid or the water pipe, or again, the internet backbone. So you only feel NIBSS if anything happens. And then if there's no water in your house, that's when you start checking the pipelines to know what's going on. If you click on a website and it's not opening, that's when you realize that the internet backbone has an issue. And then when there's no power, that's when you realize that, there's actually an electricity grid. So NIBSS is actually the payment rail for Nigeria. And we are silent. We are not in competition with anybody. We just provide the backbone for the ecosystem, fintech, the banks, and all other stakeholders, payment service companies across the country to use our APIs to serve Nigerians. So it's a very critical national infrastructure, and the federal government of Nigeria recognizes it as such, as a very critical infrastructure, and designated NIBSS as a critical national infrastructure, providing payment trail and ensuring an ecosystem stability in terms of payment and interoperability across the network in Nigeria.
So, Premier, not every like African aficionado would know, but maybe not the rest of the world. But Nigeria will be probably the fourth or the fifth largest country in terms of population by 2050, if I'm not mistaken. So there is a scale challenge, right? And how do you deal with it? Making sure that the system is resilient, and at the same time cope with innovation, right? Because you don't want to stay still. And I know this well because it's been something that we live at Swift daily as well as a market infrastructure. So and it's a bit of a dichotomy, right, in between. Make sure that everything, that the water is in the pipes. At the same time, you need also to keep an eye of innovation that is coming.
Yeah, you're absolutely very correct. It's nice to have water in the pipe. It's also nice to ensure that the pipe has no breakage. It's also nice to ensure that there's no leakage coming to the house, and you have the right pressure. And to keep up the scale in respect of payment, we have to constantly remain creative and innovative in terms of the quality of the APIs that we share and the infrastructure, the resilience of the infrastructure itself. And those we provide, but again, work with partners, the banks, the fintechs, the PSSPs to consume the APIs and then innovate around that to serve Nigerians across the ecosystem. So we also sit at the center and ensure that the API that we provide from time to time are resilient and capable to deliver some innovative product. If you look at the NIP has achieved a whole lot and achieved millions or billions of transactions between when it was first launched and now. The NIP, by the way, is 15 years old. And last year on June 17th, we successfully launched a replacement for the NIP, which is the NPS, the National Payment Stack, which is one of the components of the government's DPI, and it's going to serve as the payment leg for the DPI. So the NPS have been built to scale and also built by ensuring that regulators, the central bank, and different regulators within the government circle, different stakeholders, the banks, the fintechs, and the last mile actually have an input into what we have done. And with that, you're going to be finding a whole lot more features in terms of trust and security around the NPS rail, faster payment, improved uptime and resilience within that particular rail. And also embedded along the line is also identity, payment identity, and the finality of payment in terms of creating trust and ensuring that, yes, this payment is delivered, and then also providing a tracking capability, a real-time settlement capability as well, integrated dispute resolution, as well as improved ecosystem innovation, which we believe will power the next major innovative activities that will be happening within the ecosystem in Nigeria.
So Nigeria is by far the most vibrant ecosystem in Africa, in terms of investment flowing in, as well as number of fintech startups, as per absolute number, and many other parameters. And rightly so, I must say. I've been familiar with the ecosystem for the past decade. You have been talking. I'm pretty sure that you speak at probably 50 conferences a year, and at every conference, people you got entrepreneurs that come and talk to you, right? So my question is more of like a topic of conversation. How is NIBSS sort of powering up the startups of the ecosystem. And you mentioned a lot, the APIs that you have available, for startups to build. Do you see this as a critical component? An instant payment is a gold mine, for a builder. And do you keep an eye on helping entrepreneurs, to build over the NIBSS infrastructure?
Yes, certainly. We keep an eye on that through our API gateway. We hold a lot of section, and we also have a training academy. We have the NIBSS Academy, it has its own website out there, and we provide both virtual and physical training, especially for specific targeted market segments. So with all this that we do, and most of the other things that we provide, we help a lot of people. Most entrepreneurs, when they have their license or approval from the CBN, or they have a product they intend to release into the market, they engage NIBSS. We advise, we provide advisory services, we help to rebuild, we co-create, and ensure that the product also meets a particular level of security standard and trust. We also test with some partners, the banks, as well as the fintechs, to ensure that this product is going to be acceptable within the market space. And once we confirm all that, then APIs are released, we engage the market, and then this product can be made available to the Nigerian people.
So, something a little bit, lighter or peculiar, Premier. One of the first things that comes out when we Google you, one of the first articles, you know what that is?
NPS or NQR?
Yes, and something that you said, which I profoundly agree upon, which is the fact that instant payments should be free. That you are an advocate of zero payment cost.
Yes.
And that is, I want to double click on this, because it talks about financial inclusion, but it also talks about, how do you make the infrastructure self-sustainable? I would love you to talk a little bit about this.
Okay. I will tell you, I agree to a large extent that payments fees should be zero fees. And my regular explanation is quite simple. Instant payment is competing with cash. And if cash, I withdraw and I put cash in my pocket, I can spend to whatever amount without any extra cost on the part of the individual. Right, but the merchant can incur cost of going to the bank, or the bank incur cost of moving the cash, or CIT companies, and so on and so forth. Now, if the instant payments really seeking to replace cash or reduce cash, then you have to make sure that it is positioned in a way where it will be at par with cash. Otherwise, acceptability will not really be achieved 100%. It may be achieved for convenience for a certain class of individuals, but if you really want to move the entire nation the way I think we should be going, where every individual can achieve analysis of payment digitally, then it has to be zero rated. Now, you talked about the cost of the infrastructure. I've always asked, who funds cash? The minting of cash, who funds it? It's a case of a chicken and the egg case. I mean, which comes first? So if I fund the minting of cash and I decide to put that money on infrastructural system to power the instant payment, yes, you are even going to get better value from a digital payment than from cash. Most cash on the streets are completely unaccounted for. At some point, you need to withdraw that cash and replace the cash. But if you have your infrastructure, you keep upgrading infrastructure from time to time and so on. But I think the total cost of ownership for both cash and the instant payment, when you put them side by side, I think the instant payment will be a lot cheaper. I mean, there are countries that have been so advanced where you see a lot of digital payment adoption. So that's one of the things that I think we need to do. Initially, they look expensive. For instance, you have to make sure that every citizen has a smartphone to be able to make that payment to occur. You also have to make sure that citizens have access to data. And I also think that even for financial data, there should be zero rise as well, because at the end of the day, it's just something that will drive total payment acceptability across the ecosystem. If I have an app and my app, they are not making any payments on that financial app, it doesn't mean payment cannot be achieved at the back end one way or the other for the telcos who have invested or whatever, or from the government side and so on. But again, enabling a user to make payments instantly and at no additional cost will help a lot to power the economy and ensure that the rails are better used to drive economic adoption, not just achieve financial inclusion, but again, improve on the country's GDP and enhance productivity and become a major catalyst for economic growth for the country.
Premier, I want to talk a little bit about the last mile of the last miles. So, people that today are excluded from the financial system, even in Nigeria. By the way, there are 2 million financially excluded in the UK, so every country has its portion of financially excluded for different reasons. It could be connectivity, it could be because they have only a feature phone, it could be because they are illiterate, because, I'm thinking of, my parents who are still there and they're living in Italy and they're struggling to get their own ID and to sign with their ID, because these applications are not done by 80 years old, right? So what is the challenge, or how do you tackle some of this, and how do we reach full inclusivity, and this is, I almost want to ask you as a Nigerian, because you certainly have witnessed some of this situation or challenges as a citizen, but you have the power and the privilege to work on it, right? So I want to have your take on this.
Okay. I think, just like you said, only 2 million people in the UK, there are still a lot of people in Nigeria that are financially excluded. And I also believe that once we create the enabling environment for that, for instance, having the smartphones available, having network connectivity everywhere, we are going to see an uptick. Today, if you check the number of users on the WhatsApp platform, there are a lot more than on the financial side. So if people are comfortable around that, then I also believe that with the right APIs, creating voice pay, some other biometric systems to enable payment with ease, you're going to find a lot of people embracing the digital payment. But the most important of them all is awareness, general awareness, and building trust and security. Once there is trust in terms of payment and finality, right, you are going to see a surge. And it's also going to drive a generational activity. The older people are kind of maybe withdrawn from it because they trust cash more than digital payment. But I mean, my father is 86 years old, but today he has completely imbibed the digital payment platform. I remember about 2-3 years ago, he keeps driving to the bank, and I tried to convert him to use digital payment apps. He refused. I mean, he was an ex-banker, but I decided that, okay, this man is not listening to me because I'm his son. And I sent a colleague through. I was surprised. I was with him some days ago, and he's busy telling me of how beautiful digital payment was and how they were working some 20 years ago, 30 years ago, manually assuring payment. But today, from the comfort of his house, he's able to make payment. So that is one person converted. There are many more. It's all about awareness. It's all about training. It's all about providing trust, and then the comfort that goes with digital payment. And I think with that, we continue to sway people. And I think if you look at where we are coming from, like 20 years ago, to where we are today in Nigeria, and where we'll be 10 years' time, you will continuously reduce the number of people who are financially excluded. So today is when we have to make all those plans. Today is when we have to make all the race and make the preparation to take in all the currently excluded. If we don't do that today, the way we have seen the surge within the past 20 years, I think in the next 10 years, 15 years, a lot more will be happening. And with government increasingly imbibing the culture of digital payment, right? Yeah, that's just the way to go. Today, salaries are paid digitally, dividends are paid digitally, collections are going completely digital, tax is being paid digitally, then that's the only way to go. So just to provide the necessary apps, comfort, awareness, and you're going to see an increased adoption within the ecosystem. So those are my views.
So, Premier, how do you, if you have to rate from 1 to 10, 1 would be very little or no interoperability, up to 10 poor interoperability between, bank, fintechs, and telcos. You mentioned WhatsApp, like different digital means. How would you rate Nigeria today? Where do you think is the cursor?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Of course. So you mentioned WhatsApp, right? And you said that there are way more WhatsApp users today than people who are financially included, right? So if WhatsApp today was interoperable, for example, with the wallets, for example, or with the banking system, you would reach a even greater financial inclusion, right? So I was trying to not challenge you, but ask genuinely, how far are we in Nigeria from full interoperability, between the different players? Because you're sitting at the center of it, right? So is there still work to do?
Well, I think the central bank has done a fantastic job in Nigeria. Interoperability is mandatory. So once you collect a license from the central bank, you are required to proceed to NIBSS to ensure connectivity, to ensure testing, and until that is confirmed, you do not get your full license for activation. So to that extent, I think the Central Bank of Nigeria have significantly ensured interoperability. And from time to time, they also monitor to ensure that organizations comply to that level of standard and ensure that nobody is suffering from lack of interoperable payment. So significantly, I think we have that very high number because the central bank, who is the regulator, drives and ensures that there's interoperability. And once any entity does not conform, then the central bank intervenes almost immediately. So within the past couple of years, we've seen significant improvement in interoperability, and it still continues. So any new entity coming to the ecosystem must from the one be interoperable. And that is what
it's actually a very smart move from the central bank to make it mandatory, obviously. Maybe last topic before we wrap. I think that no other markets than Nigeria, is the best place to talk about financial literacy, right? Because when you have so easy access to financial instruments and payments instruments, you also have is very easy, for example, to borrow money. There are at least 10 to 12, fintechs in Nigeria on the top of the banks, that do either B2B or B2C lending. But with lending comes potentially a threat on the financial stability of the people, right? Because not everyone has, in her own culture, the savviness, to understand financial instruments, interest. What does it mean? So how do you see the financial literacy component and the role of the institution and the government to make sure that, the 200 million Nigerians, especially the least exposed part, don't mess up with money?
Okay, I think there's a lot being done. I mean, people will always require credit from time to time. And I think the central bank continuously provide guideline and regulation as to how this is carried out and to protect the interest of the consumers as well as the interest of the organizations by creating a fair level playing field for every party. And one of the areas we are looking at addressing that, providing easy credit for the people, is through the National Domestic Card Scheme, which is the Afrigo. Afrigo, for instance, is working seriously and of making the cost of card services a lot cheaper. And I'm happy to say here that some of the microfinance banks have been able to issue credit cards on the Afrigo rail. So with credit card, and of course, coming with a lot of awareness and education, and also being driven by regulation, we at least enable Nigerians to have easy access to funds, to at least funds for short term and then repay. And then with a lot of data sets and with the job of the credit bureau, which is also already reached a level of maturity within the ecosystem, then that continues to provide a very comfortable level for those who are providing the finances, and people also getting to know that, yes, you need to pay your dues as and when due, otherwise you have some other repercussion if you don't get that done. So I think a lot is significantly improving, and there's a balance act that people can also have access to short-term borrowings at not exorbitant rate, which is continuously balanced. And a lot of banks are also providing quick loans online, because with enhanced digital identification from the NIN to the BVN, then it's quite easy right now to identify any Nigerian. And with taking care of the issue of identity, then I can easily lend you money and then also easily ensure repayment or collection, as the case may be, within the ecosystem. So I continuously see a lot of adoption of borrowing, but again on the fair rates and pricing mechanism in place. But Afrigo is actually working very well in terms of working with a lot of banks and fintechs to ensure that a credit card system can be made available to people who can easily rely on their credit card. This is something that in our culture, most times we save money to buy things. I mean, that's the orientation in our culture. If you don't have money, then you don't buy. But we also know that, yes, credit, you can, if you have an expected inflow, then why don't you borrow against that expected inflow and buy what you need today? So you're going to see more and more increased adoption of credit cards and then other borrowings, but with controlled pricing and then repayment as well as collection improvements across the ecosystem.
Premier, one last question, like maybe a snappy one. So you will need to think about this one, right? So you have been sitting in a lot of panels, so far in the past, I want to say past decade at least, or probably more. What is it, the question that you wish they asked and they never did, because and so that it didn't give you the opportunity to talk about something that is really, that you're really fond of? What is it, the question that they never asked and you wish they would ask?
Okay, I don't need to spend time thinking about the response. I always find ways to talk about it, because one, the question is, every time we sit on panels across the world, we are talking about the same issues. And my next question is, okay, if we talk about these issues, who is actually measuring what we talked about last year from this year and next year? Where are the actionables? Right? So for me, one of the big questions is, okay, after talking about everything about payment, financial inclusion, and so on, what are we going to do to ensure that, okay, the continent, not just Nigeria, I was talking about the continent, to continuously take the right step towards the right direction and move people to be financially included. So for me, I think that's one big actionable and question I think that we should be asking ourselves. What do we need to do? When are we starting? When are we monitoring and measuring all these things we are talking about? Across the continent, for instance, we all talk about cross-border payment and all those stuff. How many people can actually achieve that? There's productivity across everywhere. How do we ensure an enhanced interoperable cross-border payment to ensure that people can sell their goods? But when that is done, then logistics become a major factor. How do you get things to move from point A to B in a record time and ensure ensure enhance productivity, sales, and then collection of payment. So I think these are the things that I wish we all sit down, ask questions around all these things, then migrate them into complete actionable state and begin the execution. So when we start talking about that, then we will be on the right track and get a lot more things done, and then see the impact directly on the, not just on my country, Nigeria, but again on the entire African landscape.
Thank you, Premier. I really, one of the things that I appreciate the most in you is your pragmatism. Right? There is an expression in Italian, you don't hide yourself behind the finger, but you really talk about issues that are not only pressing, but like very, very concrete. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Matteo. It's always nice to be in touch with you, and I really appreciate this.
Amazing. So guys, that was Breaking Banks Africa, episode number 16 with Premier Oiwoh, the CEO of NIBSS. And this is a wrap.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Banks Africa, a Provoke Media podcast in cooperation with Timepledge.org. Don't forget to share us out or shout out across social media. If there is something or someone you would like to hear on our cast, let us know. See you next month on Breaking Banks Africa.